Hey everyone, Internet TCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about A City on Mars by Kelly and Zach Weinersmith. Since we're just finished talking about the city inside the world from the new Haruki Murakami book, let's go into a book that talks about space settlement and about the logistics of it all. This is interesting, I promise. The author Kelly and Zach Weinersmith, very cool last name by the way, are a couple of husband and wife who's author a book called Sunnis that goes into 10 inventions and put their positive and negative effect on us that honestly look fun to go through. Maybe someday I can get my hand on them. But in the meantime, I'll go through this one first. The Earth, I think, is actually getting kinder, unlike what other people say. People know more about the injustice that other people face, and as a result, we as a whole is getting more progressive with more and more of us getting rid of our old habits of getting into nonsensical culture war that don't actually add anything to our life. But as a result of that, a lot of people that really wanted to oppress others for some reason are also more openly getting meaner. And it's easy to feel like wanting to leave Earth after seeing that and settling on a new space in space. It helps that now multiple countries have their own space program and even private companies goes into space program, so that is more and more of a possibility. But there are also a lot of misunderstanding, misconception, and even misinformation about space travel. One example of this is when Elon Musk kept repeating that space is not bound by Earth's law, which is untrue because of the international space law that exists. And even when it's not blatant misinformation like the example above, a lot of the concept being pushed even by Kurzgesagt like space elevator is currently just that, a concept. If it is built, what even is the material? How does it get the energy to run it? How about the durability? The constant fight against the earth speed at the top, birds ramming themselves into the tower, material decay, and with that said, how about the safety? If one of the panel near the top fell, it most likely won't just go straight down to the ground nicely. It will fly off in velocity speed, reaching what is possibly hundreds to thousands of kilometers away. So the author tried to find experts in the field to figure out those kind of questions and more. Space travel was once a booming field in the 60s because of the Cold War and the competing country trying to see which phallic-shaped rocket of theirs touched the moon first. But it didn't take long for the trend to die down because of the cost of material that kept getting worse. It's not until SpaceX managed to make spacecraft that can be reused multiple times with NASA help that the cost of rocket goes considerably down. So much so that it's projected that 90% of what is on space will rely on SpaceX on 2025. So with the combination of funding from countries, SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, I think it's not out of reach to build a rocket that can get material from rich asteroid to build a settlement eventually. But even if that's doable in a few years or a few decades, so much of space still sucks so bad that a lot of things as we know it today fall apart quite quickly once we get down to the detail. How's life in low gravity or no gravity? What about radiation? What about location? The moon is close, but there's no carbon there. The moon is the best habitable option nearby, but the surface is minus 40 degrees Celsius. And that's just the low temperature, not mentioning other factors that made it uninhabitable without any solid, sturdy, and large shield structure. The last time we made any of those was the Biosphere 2 in 1990. And that's only for 8 people for 2 years where they quickly had food and oxygen problem. And that's just 8 people. We're not even talking about millions of population yet, and until now there's no funding for it yet because there's currently no money to be had by making a complex housing the size of 2 Singapores. It's unlike making rockets done by SpaceX and Blue Origin Blue, where they are already established customers. And even if we did all of those, making space babies and housing and food and water etc., the countries and corporates that are there will still bring their competition up there. What's holding them back from hurling asteroids to each other once they figure out how to carry those asteroids for mining? Not to mention that nuke is still as much of a threat in space or even more so than it already did on Earth, because we are not in fiction, so plot armor are just gone. In real life, the countries and people that are leading the current change to space settlement are either horrible government or horrible billionaires after all. It's also unfortunate if people still see space for the solution of the current Earth problem because Earth is still a better place with better material than its competitors. Outside of science fiction with a lot of plot armor and plot convenience, it is still currently easier to save Earth's biosphere with Earth-based solar and wind power compared to making a large solar-powered space station. Space settlement is possible eventually, but trying to go there just because some random billionaires wanted to do it in his lifetime is dangerous if he ignored all the safety needed to make space settlement possible and he ruined Earth in the first place. Remember that space will not save humanity from near-term calamity by becoming a convenient new home for humans. A few calamities might hit Earth at the same time, but it will still be more habitable than Mars with easier access for material to build us back. So if you want Mars to be habitable, Earth will still need to be habitable. There's also mentioned that space can be used for industrial factories, so production will be less harmful to Earth, but the current factories are all built using Earth standard. This is not like StarCraft where the same material basically works the same in different planets. In the game, there's a plot convenience, so the game will still be fun to play. If you've watched any of Red 9 videos, you know that different materials work differently in different temperatures, not to mention different gravity. And because of how cold space is, the material and energy cost will be so much more than when it is done on Earth. So we might need a jump in battery technology before that is possible. Not to mention the travel cost to go back and forth between Earth and space and vice versa. Again, it is easier and much more efficient to change every rooftop on Earth into solar panel instead of making them in space. And space also won't make everyone equally rich just because there are more materials there. Earth is still very rich with materials, but only a few people are getting richer. The same thing will happen for the material from space. Just by being in space also won't make us wiser or unite us better. Invention will still be done by people who invent, and dumb people on social media will still be dumb. It doesn't matter if you're on Earth or Mars. And Mars settlement that will need an internet in order to communicate properly with Earth or just look up necessary guide on how to fix or build things will definitely have internet where people can still go to Twitter. The first section of the book is largely trying to debunk a lot of these arguments that are basing itself on plot armor and plot convenience that they help from fiction, and those are just based on current problems that we are currently facing. The book will then head to new problems that will happen while space settlement is being built. Currently, we don't even know who the settlers will be in order to make a space settlement. Historically, people who go there to space had to be the top tier physically, mentally, and even intellectually. There's not too much of those, and space is as deadly for us as it is for them, despite them being objectively better in a lot of things compared to us. And because of the vacuum, space put a ton of pressure in our body. If we survive the trip there without overheating ourselves like Laika, there is the danger of decompression from being exposed to space vacuum that made decompression death from diving looks like a slap in the hand. Space should help, but it did not eliminate this difference in pressure between the inside of a space station and space. Not to mention, the astronauts are breathing pure oxygen without nitrogen, which is very flammable. And flame in space behave differently than in Earth because of lack of gravity and more dangerous. There's also radiation that is inescapable in space. The sun will constantly blast you with radiation without Earth shielding, and the exploding stars in the universe also does the same thing. Radiation can and have affected adults, so how will it affect kids once they're in space? With SHIELD, the current SHIELD have a problem since they have a chance to cause spallation, where the radiation got worse after hitting the SHIELD. And the radiation also comes not just for our fleshy body, but also our equipments. They have damaged our tools on Earth without atmosphere protection, so in space it will be worse. If not the radiation, the universe is also full of speeding particles that will go through you like hot knife through butter. There's also flashes of light from dead stars and more that are really bad for you if you still want to see. And to go to Mars, the travel is around 6 months while facing all of these dangers. The first people who go there will have to willingly volunteer to be part of human experiment that might not survive before arriving there. And if you arrive, Mars had 2/5 of Earth gravity, which is bad for your bones and muscle. Remember people who got into a coma whose body is decaying year after year because they're not being used? Life on Mars will be worse for your bones and muscle because there's no constant pressure from gravity that makes you stronger. Your spine will degrade by 1% each year while lengthening from the lack of gravity, causing back pain. For muscle, the ISS astronaut who did multi-hours exercise every day lost 13% of muscle in 6 months. Good luck for the first settlers building their base with osteoporosis, weak muscle, and back problems. And the lack of gravity also causing all the blood to flow to your head and even damage your vision after a while. So if back pain is not going to stop you, that combined with blindness might. And it's not like injuries and accidents stop happening just because you're in low gravity. If anything, it'll happen more often because there's a lot of things you need to get used to. You are clumsy and clunky when you're in space. And in microgravity, bits of microbes and bacteria might be floating around, so there will need to be a dedicated room with a really good air filter system. Doctors and surgeons will also need to retrain their skills to treat these injuries in microgravity. The inside of your body is also floating around and doesn't work as well as when they're on Earth, so nutrients and medication don't work as well compared to when you're in Earth. Then physical activities are slower after all, and there is no orientation like top or bottom like on Earth, so even activities like sex will be different. We have not properly tested how to do them since there are other things more important to be prioritized right now. These are astronauts after all, not gamers trying that their fictional characters are not sexy enough. We also don't know how the sperm and eggs will do in microgravity and radiation. just like we don't know how pregnancy will work in those situations. And the whole less bone density might also be too dangerous for moms to give birth while you're in space. Not to mention the bones of the baby. If astronauts doing multi-hours exercise every day is losing bone density, how will babies that can do them fare? And you will need baby making to be available in space settlement in order for them to be capable of being independent, while also having to still send people to avoid a lack of genetic difference in later babies. We don't want them coming out like babies from Midsommar. These are all problems that there is no one funding them because we suck at solving problems before it happens, and we're still just talking about the physical issue. We're not even talking about mental issue yet. Remember, these are situations where there will be no plot convenience. In a situation where you're in space, cosmic horror is realer than ever. 2 astronauts throughout history have been recorded saying that they wanted to hang themselves, but it's difficult to do that in zero gravity. But it's hard to get data on this because a lot of astronauts, even Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, have cheated on their psych evaluation because they want to be on their flight mission to space. It's a tradition that will eventually go down through the history of space. But if we want a space settlement for millions of people, this will need to be considered. There are analogs taken from Antarctic and submarines and simulation being done for practice, but those are not usually for people that will stay there for the rest of their life, and they're still being done on Earth. So a lot of assumptions had to be placed on those sims that makes it unreliable for the most part. And even then, those show how dangerous for your psyche living in space can be. Now, 4 places that we can realistically build is in 2 places. One is the moon, which even if we can build in temperatures that are either extremely cold or extremely hot and very dangerous, it have nothing but a few minerals that we already have in abundance and lacking most of what we need. There's a good reason only 16 people have gone there, and competing countries like America, Russia, China and India that hated each other guts with a passion are not rushing to be the first to build there. It's because if things are built there, it will most likely just be for stepping stone to get somewhere else. So the first to do it will cost the most, and the rest can just come later to avoid monopoly and price fixing. For Mars, as mentioned at the start of the book, Mars is a horrible place. Climate change can ruin Earth so much more that half of it is uninhabitable for us, and it will still be a better place to live in compared to Mars. That's how bad it is. The air is toxic, and if the air is not enough, most of Mars' surface is covered by toxic dust storm. This dust storm will make sure no human can live there. And even if they stay indoor, most equipment won't work after being covered by this toxic dust. And unlike Moon that is a one-day trip over time, Mars is 6 months away like I mentioned. So you'll also need 6 months of essential food, water, and everything to keep hygiene intact on Mars because we don't know what getting sick there will entail, which means that eventually we'll have to find ways to build better toilets in space or we reach the various kind of Victorian era sickness in Mars. And by the way, these 2 places are our best option because other than Moon and Mars, all the other planets are either too far or too uninhabitable or both. We do have a third option, build our own giant rotating colony, but with how big it needed to be just so we don't get motion sickness, it'll be hit by Murphy's law the hardest, needing much more material to keep it from falling apart all the time. It's also such a big project that even if we're lucky enough that we did it on the first try, the amount of material it needs will not be worth it if Earth is consumed by climate change while it was being built. Earth contains much more people than even the smallest colony possible. But now more than 8 billion people won't fit into the 220,000 capacity of the colony have. And that's without talking about the amount of energy it will need in order for it to run 24/7 to make sure that the oxygen generator and the artificial gravity is running constantly, or there will be a lot of floating dead bodies in that colony. The book had so many of these details about problems that will need to be resolved so space travel won't end in disaster. For example, we also have to consider food, which means that we have to consider farming. In modern era, vitamin tablets are mostly marketing scams, but those will be useful because remember pirate and scurvy? Remember the lack of vitamin C? Now imagine that built in lower gravity. Thankfully, at least there are some plants that have been successfully grown on the ISS, so it is possible. But even then, it's still in small quantity and it produces worse quality of plants compared to the one we raise on Earth, so we need more funding on those. While the book shows a lot of this problem, don't be mistaken, the book is very pro about eventually going to space. A big chunk of the book is going through concept about space settlement idea that might work in the long run using current technology. Like this amazing way to shoot up and go outside without letting space dust get inside the settlement. And then some other ideas for how to build places to live that reduce material costs while shielding its inhabitants from radiation. I honestly learned a lot more than I initially expected from getting the book. I now know that space had weird international law which includes the protection of the bags of poop from Apollo as a historical site. There's also the history of rocket building, which includes Nazi slavery that they used to build the V2 rocket that mostly killed the people who made it. It goes deep into how it could go wrong, including the laws that we currently have that involve being able to eat your crewmate and the Antarctic Treaty. And more importantly, it provides us with the current things that we have that might help solve those problems in the long run. But that's if we did everything correctly to make sure it didn't add to the list of disasters that we are facing. If there's a theme in all the solution that exists for space settlement problems, is that Earth need to survive first. Not because of any romantic sentiment that it's our planet or our home, but because it's just that good of a planet. Until we actually find one that is as good as Earth, going to other places and destroying Earth even if it's just partially in the process of living it is maybe one of the dumbest things we can do as a species. And we've done a lot of dumb things. There are millions of users that still log on to Facebook or Twitter every day if you want to see examples of us being dumb. While a lot of the book can get pretty boring with too much detail and some beauty left out of jokes that not only didn't land well but also makes the story being told longer, this is still a solid book about the past, present, and future of space travel. I give this a 3.5. What do you think? Let me know if I miss anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. And spot it. See ya.